So yeah, would you like to start, start sharing, about your cloud journey, how you started and what led to you being at Microsoft right now?
Yeah, I'll get to that. But first of all, Prasad, I want to thank you all. I mean, you guys have been a big part, and I've been a part of a lot of communities. Um, but this has been, I mean, I just cannot thank you guys enough. I mean, the very first session at 3 a.m. And let's start with the fact. And I am not a 3 a.m. person. I'm not a person who would wake up at 3 a.m. We have a little joke in the house. We live in Texas and tornadoes is a big thing. And even when my kids were younger or even otherwise, my husband is like, oh, there could be a tornado passing by and I won't wake up at 3 a.m. if it is 3 a.m. So thank you for making it so good that I had multiple alarms on. I used to sleep on Saturday mornings in a separate room just because I could wake up and do this, just because this was so valuable. And everybody, Prasad, and team, I just cannot be thankful enough. That's where I want to start from. So in terms of my journey with cloud, I do have an IT background. I have been in customer success. I'll date myself. I started right out of school when it was pager days. Designing PCBs is one of the things I've done. Deployment, Microsoft products is one of the things I've done. I did it all until I got two boys, and both of them did have some developmental delays. And there came a time that us as a family and me and my husband as parents had we made the choice that I'm going to stay home and help them with what they needed, because for any parent, raising a kid is hard enough to begin with. Add those complexities and challenges to it, it takes it to a whole other level. And when you are a driven person and this is what you love, it's not easy to kind of just let go, but that was the right decision at that time. And I did that. My kids grew up, and the break, I didn't plan on being it as long as it became, and that's okay too. But right around 2020, I decided, and I was ready to get back. And cloud computing is not something, and my husband is in IT as well. He's in traditional environment. And I knew I was going to come back. I got ready is when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, my husband has always worked from home in the last 12 years. And so that was not even a challenge for us. But me getting back is where the decision was made that I'm not going. But I knew that I was ready to get back is when Amazon did mass hiring, but it wasn't in tech. It was since the business grew up exponentially for Amazon right around March, right when COVID hit. May 2020, I joined Amazon in a totally different capacity. It was within customer service realm of things. They moved me over to shipping and delivery, and it was 6 to 9 months contract. And this wasn't tech. And thankfully, we were okay where money wasn't the reason for me to get back. I wanted to get back because I wanted to get back. And that's where when I brought on this decision, and I knew I will have some resistance from my husband, because he was like, this is not tech. And my promise to him was, yes, this is not tech, but I'll figure my way out. I'll look into things and I will be back to tech. And
so
that
was a long break, right? How long the break was?
It was 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was 8 years, and I was like,
Almost starting from the scratch, right? Like,
yes, I was already like, I was out of touch, but yet I kind of kept in touch. Where I kind of remained in touch is, if you see my husband's office, we've got a rack of servers. So anything new, he was experimenting or doing stuff and all of that, even though I was home, I didn't lose touch. But at the same time, you are so right. 8 years is a long, long time. And even if COVID didn't happen, I knew I had a challenge ahead, just to get back, even if it was data center, right? So that's where, when I was working in a different capacity, I created a free tier account, AWS, right? I started looking around. I started looking into, with being Amazon employee, you did have access to some trainings, but it was still intimidating. I didn't sign up until, there was a, Nancy Wang, she's a general manager within storage, and she's got a nonprofit called, Advancing Women in Tech. She came up with a cloud practitioner certification challenge, and I signed up. And I signed up even though I was that short term. It was a different category in mass hiring. I reached out to her. I said, I know it's AWS, I know it's regular employees, but I do want to do it. And she did like make arrangements for me to be included. And within 15 days, I had my certification with a full-time job, where I was still trying to get back to the rhythm of things. And that rhythm of things, honestly, wasn't like smooth ride in the sense, like, it was fast paced. Amazon would train people for 6 weeks. It came down to 2 weeks. By the time I joined, it was 1 week of training and boom, right, get in. But at the same time, when I did that, I knew cloud computing is where I wanted to be. This is where I'm going to do things. And that's when I started doing the internal trainings. I knew, and I've got a thing with, this is one of my skills, that I'm good with people, you know, and looking at different aspect of things. I was like, okay, architecture route is where I'm going to go. But
that's a great point here. Like, architecture is like 50% technical and 50% consulting. It's a people skill that is not required in the architecture skill.
yeah,
It's in the architecture domain. So yeah.
so that's where knowing myself, that I'm good with people and good with ambiguities, in the sense, like, anytime we're doing architecture, right, it's a lot of times you might not have customer laying it out for you. This is my challenge and this is where I want to be. This is like going and having a conversation, and understand it even when they're not saying it. But even that was like, okay, I did my AWS, the associate exam, the SAA, in April 2021. And yet I knew there is something missing. There is something missing in the sense that, partly, and rightly so, with companies, they would have their reservations, because I have a huge gap. Even though I worked for Amazon for like, 9 months, it wasn't in the capacity, in the direction I was heading in. So it technically still was a gap. I joined another program wherein I did go deep into learning architecture, not just the services, because services alone do not make architecture. You have to be able to tie in things and be able to tie in to the business requirements, the outcomes, the transformations. All of that element had to come in. And I started following you, Prasad, way before you started BeSA Program. And when you started with that, I signed up. I, started attending. 3 a.m. wasn't easy. I've already said that, but it was valuable enough for me to have that drive to do that. And that's exactly what I did. And what it gave me was a lot of confidence and a different perspective to look at things. I mean, it could be Jamila explaining her IoT project, right? I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It could be Chris talking about her journey in the sense, oh, I had to learn a new language. Not only she's learning architecture, she's learning a new language altogether in order to get where. So it was a lot of, surrounding yourself and seeing people go through the journey and yet getting there at some point is what was very helpful also. So, and I started interviewing in this year, March, and I'm gonna say I have had my fair share of failures.
Let's talk about that. So everyone feels that, yeah, success, we all know success is not easy and it's a
Yeah.
journey, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it gets built on a lot of failures that we go through, and it's a process.
Yeah, it sure is a process. I mean, if anything, this looks good, whatever it is right now, but it's come with its own challenges and its own hardships in a way. But yes, I even interviewed for AWS, and part of it was, and that's where this confidence element. This was before I joined BeSA Program, not because I did not know tech. Maybe there were some gaps. I would accept that, but more so because during technical interview I froze, and I could not even show them what I had and what I knew and what. But at the same time, I was sad. Honestly, I was upset, but I could not sit with that forever.
Yes, it's a learning experience, right?
It's
So
a learning experience, and I moved on from that in the sense. And let me tell you, AWS, and now you guys do have a returnship program for solution architecture. It
yes.
wasn't there then. That is the route I would have taken if that was there back in March. It wasn't, and that's okay. And I still took the leap and I did what I did. And there was a lot of learning within that experience as well.
So yeah, on that point, AWS has internship program for a lot of roles. Recently, they added for solutions architects also, but AWS and Amazon overall has a lot of openings for internship roles. So if anyone has a career break, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be able to help you in point the right direction. Or you can simply go to amazon.com/jobs. I think just search for internship, and you'll be able to see all
Yeah,
the
all you have to do is returnship, and you can even filter it by the country you're in,
location.
and
Yeah.
you should be able to. And within that, I mean, another little thing I would say is a lot of career fairs, a lot of stuff is virtual. Attend those, because that's where you making connections, and within my journey, this is classic. I mean, this is funny too, but at the same time, this is who I was when I started looking for a job. I started with what, 45 or 50 LinkedIn connections, and I was literally hiding my. I mean, I didn't want to put in the experience because that's going to show the gap, and I was like, okay, no experience means, somehow I'm kind of, it's not visible, but closing my eyes wasn't helpful, is where I built it up to. I did that, and built up my connections, put my and owning my career break. When we talk about confidence element, that is huge in interviews. I mean, none of us, Prasad, I mean, you are at that principal architect level. I'm sure you're learning every day. I am doing whatever I'm doing. I don't know everything. And I probably wouldn't know everything even 10 years later. I don't know. But it's going to be a learning thing every day. But having that confidence and having that learning attitude is what was probably one of the selling things, or one of the things where it was a win, because once I embraced what I had, and transferable skills for that matter. Because even though I may be at home, I had different set of challenges, and I overcome those challenges is what I could present in interviews. And at the same time, just let them know that if I have put in the work. You're not going to believe it, Prasad. There have been days when it was 16-hour days, like literally practically.
Studying.
Yeah. I mean, I would cook, clean, whatever I have to do, taking care of, it was barely any sleep on some days, but it wasn't because it was a push. It was because this is one thing I was passionate about. And when you are passionate about something and this is what you love, it doesn't feel like work. And it doesn't feel like work even today. I mean, I'm barely a month in. I'm not required to be ramping up at the rate I'm ramping up at, but this is what I love, and let's face it, when and Microsoft wasn't in my list of companies. And this is another thing I would say, rather than applying in bulk to many things, look where you really want to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be a FANG company. It has to be where your values align, what works for you, given what your family and personal preferences are. And as much as Microsoft was not in the list of things, just when the talent sourcer reached out, I knew Microsoft's values and the way this company is.
So hold on.
Yeah.
A talent sourcer reached out to you from Microsoft.
They did.
On LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, yes.
And you started with 45 LinkedIn connections.
Yes. And by this time, I was ready. And by this time, I was active on LinkedIn. By this time, I already was following. See, this is another element. You are who you surround yourself with, like people even if it's virtual surrounding, even if I'm following people, I'm connecting with people based off of what do they have to offer, and they did reach out. And when they did reach out and I went through the interview the way, the multiple steps, and one of the steps was writing a paper about like architecture overall. That was one of the things, in the sense that trying to see how I think. It was 3 vague questions. I won't say vague, broad questions. You can take them in any direction. I wanted to answer them separately. I gave it 4 days to even think as to how I'm going to tackle those, right? Just the thought process, just as to what all could be entailed. And finally, when I wrote it, I started off with, I'm going to answer all 3 of them in one answer. I can't answer them separately because everything is tying in. So that's the process, and how everything, and that could be the business aspect of things, the actual technical aspect of things, or whatever. And Microsoft knew that I do not have any Azure certs yet, and they were willing to work with me. And I just got my first one within the first month. But at the same time, the important thing was, do I understand architecture? Do I understand? Am I willing to learn? Do I have the passion for cloud architecture overall? And then rest of it is going to fall in place. And fun fact, here I was for months trying to land one role. I just wanted to be like in IT now. I could not just detour at this point. And I landed 2 different roles at the same time with 2 great places. Microsoft is where I went with, and this is another consulting company. I don't even know if I should name it or not. Accenture is where I had another role, and that's another great place to work at. It was so hard to.
So you had 2 roles to choose from.
On
okay. How many interviews did you fail before having these two offers?
Many, I would say. Many. But in the beginning, I was taking every single recruiter or anybody. But by the time it was a month mark, I was like, I can't do this. This is not sustainable, right? And that's when I started coming up with a list of people or list of things, or even the initial calls or researching the companies to see if they're going to support um, me getting back, right?
Yeah.
And if that was the case, and if that is where I was getting that feel, and there were a couple of more companies which I kind of stopped. Meta was one of them, wherein we had the conversations. Okay, this is how it's going to be. It's in process. I had some rounds, and we were still waiting on moving forward. And after Microsoft offer came along and Accenture came along, I was like, that's it. The search is over and I'm done. So you have to kind of know all of that elements too. Where do you want to be? What aligns with your values? And be prepared. Be prepared in the sense, it's when we talk about the soft skills, I cannot say enough about those. Those are important. You being confident in the interview is important. Some of the things which could help could be, it might sound strange, but practicing in front of the mirror,
I totally agree. Your confidence comes from preparation. Uh, so all the interviews that I have failed is mainly because I did not have enough confidence because I was not enough prepared. Once you are prepared, you are confident, then it seems like it's a cakewalk. Not a cakewalk as such, but it becomes a lot more
it's
easy.
relatively easier. It's
Yes.
relatively easier, and you're not stressed, and that's what happened with AWS interview. I did not practice enough. I'll be honest, and I have no qualms about saying that right here. I did not practice enough. But another takeaway from the experience I've had is learn from each experience, get better. And that would mean that you have to look at your own self and kind of be not like too critical, but at the same time, realistically be critical enough to see where did I go wrong and how am I going to make it better next time. So, and with the Microsoft interview, Prasad,
There
you
is
didn't even.
one question, sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
which
Okay.
I've learned. What is the course that she took about architecture? And few people are asking that.
Okay, so there are two things. There's a company called Go Cloud Architects. It's a paid program though, so it's a choice. And I'm not I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but this was me back in April 2021 when I didn't know about any other communities as well, which were free. And and this was a good way for me connecting with people um, who were in the same journey. And that's where I made connections in the sense that there were people heading in the same direction. We used to meet up. We would come up with like a business case, a scenario, discuss stuff, all of that. And of course, there were live classes also over there. In terms of books, there's one book by Saurav Mittal. He's an architect. He's a principal. I don't even know. He's been promoted. I can't even. I don't want to say his title wrong, but it's a solution architect book by it's Pact Publishers. I would say that's literally a Bible for solution architecture. It's not all focused on AWS services, but it's for things in general, like architecture, explaining from right at the basics in terms of what kind of architect positions you could have to quantum computing, like front to back, if you want to go through it. So that was another book which was helpful. But when we talk about what was helpful, it could be what are other people doing which is helping them. And at the same time, You work on your own gaps, knowledge gaps for that matter, and reach out to people who are already there and willing to help. In my case, Prasad didn't even know that Microsoft is where I was interviewing. I reached out. I reached out to him, and I reached out. And again, when you're seeking help, everybody who's volunteering or everybody who's gonna help you out have their own full-time jobs, have their own family stuff going on. Reach out with, this is what I've done already. Even if that means you're just starting out, I'm just starting out, can you help me get started? That's where you could be seeking help. Or you could be, the team I'm a part of, it's an app innovation team. I have never developed apps, but that doesn't mean I won't be able to do it, right? But at the same time, I knew that this is not my strong suit, right? And I reached out to Prasad and I was like, Prasad, I've already done this, this, this. These are the books I've gone through. This is what I've done. These are my knowledge gaps. Do you have any resources you can point me out to so that I can bridge those gaps? It was specific enough ask. And at the same time, joining those, the sessions every single week, he knew enough that I'm putting in my efforts from my side, is where he was so willing to just come out and say, okay, this is the Udemy course. This is what it is. Look at it. I wouldn't have come across that if I didn't reach out to him. Reach out for help where you need help, but reach out, I would say, with not just, hey, Prasad, I want a job. Can you help me? Because
that's not how it works. I'll be barely able to help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's not a dig on anybody, it's just a basic human reaction. And that's what I've learned along. Make connections as you go along. When you ask for help, do ask for help wherever you need help. Be respectful of other people's time too. And yet be specific with your ask. This is where I am. This is what it is. And Prasad was one of the first people who knew, even when I could not even make it official. I was like, oh, I want you to know that, by the way, whatever you help me with, it helped. And I would be starting, but I'm still going through background, so it cannot be official, but I wanted you to know. So there's that. It's not one prescription. And like I said, it's been numerous hours of just going. It could be something like, you have your favorite people. If they have any kind of free YouTube courses, I would be in the kitchen listening to that. You go for walks, you listen to it. You may not be able to, and everybody has a life, challenges, but you have to carve out time. It could be smaller blocks of time. Do whatever works for you and kind of, and you will get where you need to be. It could be a little later than what you're planning on, but things are going to fall in place, is what I want to say.
Yeah. It's a, journey, sometimes long, but yeah, the hard work and determination is what is going to get you there, so. Awesome. This is really helpful. And yeah, it's a very inspiring story for me, very personally, before we close this out, I know we are way over time, the 90 minutes mark that we thought, but is there any final advice that it's completely fine, it's very useful, very, very useful. Anyone who is starting out now, at whichever phase of the career they are, is there any one advice that you would like to give them?
Keep at it. Don't be discouraged when things get discouraging, give yourself, I'd be like, yeah, you could be sad, you could be down, but don't let it get past a day or 2 or 4 days or whatever. Surround yourself with people who are positive, who are helpful, and just become a part of the community. This community is a safe community. Look left, right, whosoever's there, connect with them. What are they doing? What is working for them? with the Prasad and group, you know, they might have a limited bandwidth, but when you are, you know, within the BeSA group, other people might be able to help you. They might have a certain thing which is their strength, where you're trying to fill in those knowledge gaps. Connect with those people. And I would say it from my personal advice, like this other group that I'm part of, when I was starting out with this interview, and I'm like, hey, you've done app development. Can you fill me in on a few things? That guy got on the Zoom call. We spent 2 hours. That was more than enough for me to feel confident about where I was heading at. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's already in the role. It could be somebody who's in, like, going through the same journey and yet be able to help you where you need to be. And one last piece of advice: when you get there, don't forget to give back.
That's important. Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
I
agree.
don't know. And this is very, very, very important to me. And this is, and when you get to a new job, okay, fine, first couple of months could be busy, or within that time period, you're taking out 15, 20 minutes for somebody else who's struggling or trying to get there. It could be just a word of encouragement. Take out that time. You're not done. You know, you're not done by just getting there. You have to, not you have to. I don't know. It's just who I am. I would.
And
And
that also is great feeling. It's like we keep learning, and
yes,
even by giving back, we learn a lot.
yes.
So yeah.
Keep learning. That's the big thing. And that's the big thing with Microsoft. I mean, that's what Satya Nadella is all about. Keep learning. And yeah, and feel free to reach out if there's anything I can help you with. And thank you again. Thank you, Prasad, Ashish, Chris, Jamila, Alex, James. I mean, I just cannot thank you guys enough.